The neon signs of the celestial nexus flickered in 17 different wavelengths, casting strange shadows across the crowded establishment. It was one of thousands of rest stops scattered throughout the Andromeda trade route, a place where species from 100 worlds mingled, traded, and refueled before continuing their journeys through the void. Commander Thexlar stood at his usual post near the entrance, his forearms crossed in what passed for authority among the Zephyrini people. His compound eyes scanned the crowd with practiced efficiency, always watching for trouble. In 30 cycles of working security at the Nexus, he'd seen every kind of disturbance imaginable. He'd broken up territorial disputes between methane breathers and oxygen breathers, stopped smugglers from 6 different cartels, and once even prevented a full-scale riot when a crystalline ambassador insulted a Magnar warlord's carapace pattern. But tonight's problem was simpler, more mundane. An elderly Vakrian sat hunched at corner table 47, his gray scales dulled with age, his movements slow and deliberate. The old one, as the staff had taken to calling him, had been there for 3 standard hours, nursing a single glass of deuterium water that had long since gone warm. "That's it," growled Kresh, Thexlar's second in command, a massive Krogthan whose species was renowned for their impatience. "He's taking up space. We've got paying customers waiting." Thexlar nodded. It was true. The dinner rush was beginning and management had been clear about their policies. The Nexus wasn't a charity. Every table needed to generate revenue, especially during peak hours. They approached the old one's table together, their boots thudding against the metallic floor. The elderly Vakrian didn't look up, his roomy eyes fixed on the table surface where he traced invisible patterns with one withered claw. "Sir," Thexlar began, his translator rendering his words in standard galactic common. "We're going to need you to settle your account and vacate the premises." The old one finally raised his head, and for a moment Thexlar saw something ancient in those eyes, something that spoke of wars fought and worlds lost. The Vakrian's voice was barely a whisper, crackling like dried leaves. I seem to have miscalculated my funds. Perhaps if I could work something out." "No tabs," Kresh interrupted, his tone brooking no argument. "Management policy. You pay or you leave. Simple." The old one's shoulders sagged, whatever fight he'd had draining away. He began to rise, his movements painful, each joint protesting. Several nearby patrons turned to watch, some with pity, others with the cold indifference common to those who traveled the void. The universe was harsh, and sympathy was a luxury few could afford. Thexlar felt a twinge of something uncomfortable in his primary stomach, but he pushed it aside. Rules were rules. He'd enforced them for 30 cycles, and he wouldn't stop now for— "Excuse me." The voice was quiet, almost lost in the ambient noise of the establishment, but there was something about it that made Thexlar pause. He turned to find a human standing nearby, unremarkable by most standards. Humans were relatively new to the galactic stage, having only achieved faster-than-light travel 2 centuries ago. This one wore the standard jumpsuit of a cargo hauler, his brown skin bearing the calluses and scars of someone who worked with their hands. "Yes?" Thexlar asked, his irritation evident. The human gestured toward the old one with a simple nod. "How much does he owe?" Kresh checked his datapad, his expression skeptical. 47 credits, plus a 15% service charge. Why? The human pulled out a credit chit, thumbing it active. "Put it on my account, and bring him another drink. Something warm if you have it, and food, whatever he wants." Thexlar's compound eyes widened. "Sir, that's not necessary. We're simply enforcing—" "I know what you're enforcing," the human said, his voice still quiet but somehow carrying more weight than before. "And I'm paying his bill. That settles it, doesn't it?" Kresh looked at Thexlar, who hesitated. Technically, yes, it did settle the matter. But something about this felt wrong, or perhaps right in a way that made him uncomfortable. The human hadn't made a scene, hadn't shamed them or lectured them about compassion. He'd simply solved the problem in the most direct way possible. "I suppose it does," Thexlar admitted. The human nodded once, then started to turn away, but the old one's voice stopped him. "Wait, young one. Why would you do this? You don't know me. We've never met." The human paused, his hand resting briefly on the back of the Vakrian's chair. A small smile played at the corners of his mouth. "My grandfather used to say that the measure of a civilization isn't found in its tallest buildings or fastest ships. It's found in how it treats those who can no longer build or fly." He glanced at Thexlar and Kresh, and his eyes held no judgment. only a quiet certainty. Besides, sir, you look like someone who has stories to tell, and where I come from, we believe that stories are worth more than credits. With that, the human walked back to his own table, disappearing into the crowd as if nothing significant had happened, but the old one watched him go, something shifting in those ancient eyes. Perhaps it was gratitude. Perhaps it was recognition of something fundamental and kind in a universe that too often forgot kindness. Thexler stood there for a long moment, his datapad hanging uselessly in one hand. Around them, the Nexus continued its eternal rhythm, thousands of beings passing through on their way to somewhere else. But at table 47, the old one sat a little straighter, and when his fresh drink arrived along with a steaming plate of food, he nodded his thanks. And Commander Thexlar, veteran of 30 cycles of security work, found himself wondering if perhaps the rules he'd enforced so rigidly all these years had been missing something essential, something the humans, for all their youth and inexperience in the galactic community, seemed to understand instinctively. That in the vast cold emptiness of space, sometimes the most revolutionary act was simply recognizing another being's dignity.